The morning mist clung to the ancient stones of Ironhold Castle like a burial shroud, its tendrils reaching through the arrow slits and creeping along the battlements where guards stood their silent watch. But we begin our tale 3 weeks before this morning, in a candle-lit chamber hundreds of miles away, where a hooded figure sat alone at an oak desk scarred by centuries of use. The quill scratched against parchment with deliberate strokes, each word chosen with the precision of a master chess player moving pieces across a board spanning kingdoms. The letter bore no signature, only a seal of black wax impressed with the emblem of a raven holding a key, a symbol that would make powerful men tremble and wise men pray. The pieces are in motion. The proud lord shall fall, but not in the way you expect. Trust the servant girl. She is more than she appears, much more. But beware, in this game even the players do not know they are playing, and the board itself may be an illusion. When you hear the bells of midnight toll 13 times, you will know the endgame has begun. The figure folded the letter with practiced precision, sealed it, and handed it to a messenger who disappeared into the night. That letter would soon lay hidden in Lord Marcus's private chambers, concealed behind a false stone that had kept secrets for 5 generations of cruel lords. Only 3 souls would know of its existence, or so Lord Marcus would believe. In truth, 12 people would read those words, each believing they alone possessed this knowledge, each playing a role in a drama whose script they couldn't fully comprehend. Through the grey dawn, a weathered wagon creaked toward the gates of Ironhold Castle, its wheels groaning under the weight of broken dreams and desperate hopes. Inside huddled young women seeking work as servants, each carrying stories of families lost to plague, farms burned by raiders, or fathers dead in distant wars. Among them sat Elena, her green eyes carefully downcast, her dress bearing the patches and worn edges of poverty. Yet beneath the grime, deliberately rubbed into her fingernails, her hands bore no calluses from true labor, a detail only the most observant would notice, and none here possessed such careful eyes. Master Cromwell, the head steward, emerged from the castle's shadow like a spider descending to inspect flies caught in its web. His gaunt frame seemed to bend the very air around him, and servants had long whispered that he could hear thoughts and smell fear. He inspected the new arrivals with the kind of disdain that comes from years of proximity to power without truly possessing it. Lord Marcus expects perfection. His voice cut through the morning air like a blade through silk. Those who fail to meet his standards will find themselves in the dungeons, or worse. Last month, a clumsy serving girl dropped a goblet of wine. She has not been seen since, though some say they hear screaming from the lower chambers when the moon is dark. The girl beside Elena, barely 16, with hollow cheeks that spoke of too many missed meals, whispered fearfully, "They say he killed his first wife, pushed her from the tower on their wedding night because she spoke back to him." Elena let herself shiver visibly, her shoulders hunching as if trying to become smaller, less noticeable. It was a masterful performance, one she had perfected in front of mirrors for months. When Cromwell's hawk-like gaze fell upon Elena, she felt the weight of years of training pressing down, reminding her that one false move, one moment of revealed intelligence, could unravel plans set in motion before she was even born. "You girl with the green eyes, step forward." She stumbled, catching her toe on a cobblestone that she had noted precisely 14 steps from the wagon. The stumble was calculated to the inch, enough to seem clumsy, not so much as to appear staged. "Yes, my lord." "Lord?" Cromwell's voice dripped with contempt. "I'm no lord, you simpleton. Can you even count?" Elena let her lower lip tremble, her eyes darting left and right as if seeking escape. I can count to 10, sir, on my fingers. My mam taught me before the fever took her." The other servants snickered, some from genuine amusement, others from relief that they weren't the ones being singled out. Cromwell's thin lips twisted into what might charitably be called a smile, but more closely resembled a wound. "You'll work in the kitchens. Try not to poison anyone with your stupidity. Margot will beat the foolishness out of you, or you'll die trying to learn. Either way serves Lord Marcus's purposes. As Elena shuffled toward the kitchen entrance, she caught a glimpse of movement in a high tower window, a flash of auburn hair, quickly withdrawn. Lady Katerina was watching. The first piece had touched the board. The kitchens of Ironhold Castle were a realm unto themselves, a subterranean world of smoke and steam, shouting and clanging, where the hierarchy was as rigid as any noble court. At its center ruled Margot the cook, a woman whose massive frame and flour-dusted apron concealed depths no one suspected. She moved between the ovens and preparation tables with surprising grace, orchestrating the chaos of meal preparation with the skill of a general conducting a battle. "So you're the new girl who can barely count," Margot said, her voice carrying the musical lilt of the southern provinces, though sometimes Elena caught hints of other accents bleeding through, Eastern, perhaps, or something older. "Can you at least tell salt from sugar?" "I think so, Mum. Salt's the one that tastes like tears." Margot paused in her kneading, studying Eleanor with eyes that seemed older than her face suggested. "Tears, eh? You've known sorrow then, girl? Haven't we all, ma'am?" "Aye, that's the truth of it." Margot returned to her work, but Elena felt those eyes upon her throughout the day, measuring, evaluating. "Tell me, girl, what brings you to Ironhold? There are safer places to seek work." Elena had prepared for this question. "My village was burned by raiders 2 months past. They say Lord Marcus has strong walls and pays regular wages. I've nowhere else to go." "Raiders?" Margot mused, her hands never stopping their work. "Strange how many villages have been burning lately. Almost as if someone wanted to drive desperate people to certain castles, wouldn't you say?" The question hung in the air like a blade. Elena kept her eyes down, scrubbing a pot with practiced inefficiency. "I wouldn't know about such things, ma'am. I just needed work." That evening, as the servants gathered for their meagre supper of bread and pottage, Margot held court with stories that walked the line between entertainment and warning. "Mark my words," she said, ladling out portions with mechanical precision. "There's something evil in this castle, not just Lord Marcus and his cruelties. That's evil enough, but common evil, the kind you find in any stronghold where power goes unchecked. No, I mean something older, darker." A scullery maid named Anne leaned forward. "What do you mean, Margot?" "Lady Katerina, the Lord's betrothed. She's been acting strange since she arrived a month ago. Sometimes she speaks in tongues, foreign words that make no sense. The Lord thinks she's gone mad with pre-wedding nerves, but I've heard madness, and this isn't it. It's like she's talking to someone who isn't there, and always in languages no Christian woman should know." Maybe she's possessed," whispered another servant. Margot's laugh was bitter. "Possessed, perhaps. Or perhaps she's something worse. Someone who knows exactly what she's doing and why. I've seen her walking the battlements at midnight, and I swear by all the saints, sometimes her shadow doesn't match her movements." That night, when the castle settled into its uneasy sleep, for no one truly slept peacefully in Ironhold, Eleanor moved through the corridors like a shadow. The guard rotations were exactly as her intelligence had indicated. 2 minutes between patrols on the 3rd floor, 45 seconds of blind spot by the chapel entrance, and most importantly, the guard at Lady Katerina's door always dozed off after his midnight meal. Courtesy of the mild sedative Margot had been adding to the guard's ale for weeks. She stopped at Lady Katerina's door, pressing her ear against the ancient wood. The voice that drifted through was clear, educated, and speaking fluent Arabic. Not the ravings of madness, but the calculated words of someone reciting intelligence reports. "The northern passes remain secure. The Duke of Westmarch has agreed to our terms. Payment of 30,000 gold crowns has been transferred through the Venetian banks. The weapons shipment will arrive under cover of the Harvest Festival. God willing, we will be ready." Elena's eyes widened, not in surprise, but in recognition. The accent wasn't quite right. Too much Persian influence, not enough Moorish. Lady Katerina had learned her Arabic in the East, probably Constantinople, which meant she was connected to the shadow network. A floorboard creaked behind her. Elena spun. her hand moving instinctively to where a blade would be if she were armed. Master Cromwell stood in the shadows, his face unreadable. "Lost, little servant?" Elena let her body language shift back to the frightened girl. I was looking for the privy, sir. I got turned around in the dark. The privy is 3 floors down and in the opposite direction." His smile was predatory. "Perhaps you need education in more than just counting. Come with me." Her mind raced through possibilities. Had he seen her listening? Was this part of his patrol? Or had he been following her? The wrong decision here could end everything. She chose submission, dropping to her knees. "Please, sir, I meant no harm. I'll go back to the kitchens. I'll never wander again." "Get up, fool girl. If I wanted you punished, you'd already be in chains." He studied her with those calculating eyes. "You interest me, Elena. Yes, I know your name. I know all the names in this castle. Even the rats have names here, and I know them all." He turned and walked away, then paused. "Next time you're lost, remember, the castle has eyes everywhere. Some belong to Lord Marcus, some to me, and some belong to powers you couldn't imagine. Choose your allegiances carefully, little servant. In this place, even the right choice can be fatal." After he disappeared into the shadows, Elena remained still for a full minute, listening, waiting. Then she heard it, the faintest whisper of silk against stone. Someone else had been watching. The castle was indeed full of eyes, and she was beginning to realize she wasn't the only one playing a deeper game. The next morning brought news that set the castle buzzing with excitement and dread in equal measure. Lord Marcus had announced that in 1 week's time a great feast would be held to celebrate his engagement to Lady Caterina. Noble houses from across the realm would attend. The kitchens erupted into controlled chaos as Margot began preparations for a meal to feed 300 guests. 7 courses, she bellowed, waving a ladle like a general's baton. "Each one grander than the last. We'll need 50 chickens, 6 whole pigs, 2 deer, and God knows how much fish. Elena, you'll be serving in the Great Hall. Time to teach you how to pour wine without spilling it on dukes' heads." As Elena practiced walking with a heavy serving tray, she noticed Margot adding unusual ingredients to certain dishes, herbs she recognized from her training, bloodwort, which could reveal hidden magics, truth-teller's bane, which prevented enchantments, and, most interesting, a pinch of moonflower, which when combined with wine would make people more likely to reveal their true nature. "Interesting seasonings," Elena said quietly when they were alone. Margot's eyes glinted. A cook must know her herbs. Some add flavor, some preserve meat, and some preserve kingdoms. You'd do well to remember that, girl who counts on her fingers but whose eyes count everything else. The week passed in a blur of preparation. Elena observed everything. The secret meetings between Cromwell and unknown figures in hooded cloaks, the way Lady Caterina's handmaidens changed every few days as if they kept disappearing, the strange symbols being carved into the underside of the feast tables, and most unnervingly, the arrival of black-clad figures who took residence in the castle's eastern tower, and were seen by none save those who brought them food that was always returned untouched. The night before the feast, Elena was summoned to an unexpected place, Lord Marcus's private chambers. Her blood ran cold. Such summons usually had only one purpose, and surviving them intact was rare. She entered to find Lord Marcus standing by his window, looking out at the gathering storm clouds. He was a large man, powerful in build, with the kind of presence that filled rooms and crushed spirits. His black beard was carefully oiled, and his clothes were of the finest quality, but there was something in his bearing that suggested all this finery was a costume, a role being played. "You're the new servant, the simple one." "Yes, my lord." He turned to study her, and she saw intelligence in those cruel eyes, more intelligence than he usually displayed. "Tell me, simple girl, what do you see when you look at me?" The question was a trap, with no safe answer. Too much perception would reveal her intelligence, too little might insult him. "I see a great lord, my lord, strong and feared He tasted the word. "Yes, I suppose I am. Do you know why I had you brought here?" "No, my lord. Because Cromwell is suspicious of you. He thinks you're a spy." Marcus moved closer, and Elena could smell wine on his breath, but his eyes were sharp, focused. "Are you a spy, little servant?" "I don't understand the question, my lord. I serve in the kitchens." Marcus laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Perfect. Absolutely perfect. Either you're exactly what you appear, or you're so well trained that it doesn't matter. Either way, you'll serve my purposes tomorrow night." He returned to his window. "You'll be serving at the high table during the feast. You'll pour wine for myself and Lady Katerina. Whatever happens, whatever you see or hear, you'll continue serving. Do you understand?" "Yes, my lord." "Go then. And girl, wear something prettier than those rags. I won't have my guests thinking I can't properly dress my servants." As Elena left, she caught sight of something that made her blood freeze. The letter with the raven seal sitting open on his desk. But the words were different from what she'd been told. This letter spoke of assassination, of signals to be given, of a poison that would be introduced during the toast. The game was deeper than she'd known, and she was walking into a trap that had been set for multiple players. The night of the feast arrived with unseasonable cold and a full moon that seemed too bright, casting shadows that moved independently of their sources. The great hall had been transformed into something from a fever dream. Banners hung from every surface, each bearing the crests of attending houses, but in the flickering torchlight, the heraldic animals seemed to writhe and watch. The tables groaned under the weight of Margot's masterpieces. Roasted peacocks redressed in their feathers, pies shaped like castles complete with pastry knights, and a massive subtlety crafted from sugar depicting Lord Marcus slaying a dragon. Elena stood ready in her new serving dress, simple but clean, a marked improvement from her usual attire. She'd been positioned exactly where Lord Marcus had instructed, behind the high table where she could serve the lord and lady directly. From this vantage point, she could see everything. The nervous twitch in Lady Katerina's eye, the way certain nobles kept checking the exits, and most tellingly, how Cromwell had positioned his men at strategic points throughout the hall. The nobility of 5 kingdoms had gathered, each bringing their own secrets and schemes. Duke Aldrich of Westmarch, whose loyalty could be bought and sold thrice in a single day. Countess Ravenna of the Northern Marches, whose beauty was matched only by her ruthlessness. Bishop Montrose, Lady Katerina's supposed uncle, whose holy vestments concealed armor and whose prayers contained coded messages. And dozens more, each a potential ally or enemy in games within games. Lord Marcus stood, raising his goblet, and the hall fell silent. He was in his element now, the cruel lord playing to his audience, his voice carrying to every corner of the vast space. "My lords and ladies, tonight we celebrate not merely an engagement, but the joining of 2 great houses, a union that will strengthen the realm against all threats within and without." Polite applause rippled through the gathering, though Elena noticed certain nobles exchanging meaningful glances. "But before we feast," Marcus continued, his smile becoming predatory, "I would provide you with entertainment. You see, there has been much talk lately about the equality of man, dangerous ideas spreading from the universities and free cities, ideas that suggest a peasant might be equal to a prince, that blood and breeding mean nothing. Tonight I shall demonstrate the absurdity of such notions." His eyes found Elena, and she knew the performance was about to begin. "You, girl, come forward." Elena moved with practiced clumsiness, nearly tripping over her own feet, clutching the wine pitcher like a lifeline. The nobles laughed, already enjoying the show. "This creature," Marcus announced, "serves in my kitchens. She can barely count, cannot read, and thinks the world ends at the village boundary. Yet according to these modern philosophers, she is my equal." He laughed, and others joined him, though not all. Elena noticed Lady Katerina had gone very still, her knuckles white as she gripped her goblet. "Let us test this theory. Girl, do you know what language I'm speaking?" The common tongue, my lord." "Indeed. But what if I spoke thus? He switched to Norman French, the language of courts and culture. Cette créature ne comprend rien. Elle est moins qu'un animal, car même les animaux peuvent apprendre. The educated nobles laughed louder now, understanding his insults. Elena kept her expression blank, confused. Marcus continued his performance, switching to Latin. Inferior by birth, inferior by nature, inferior by divine decree. Thus has it always been, thus shall it always be. Then Greek, each phrase more insulting than the last, comparing her to livestock, to furniture, to the dirt beneath their feet. Bishop Montrose added his own voice, supporting the mockery with theological justifications for the natural order. You see, Marcus was reaching his crescendo, she might as well be a— Actually, my lord, Elena interrupted, her voice cutting through his sentence like a sword through silk. The transformation was instant and complete. Her posture straightened, her eyes sharpened, and her voice carried the kind of authority that comes from absolute confidence. Your Greek pronunciation is atrocious. It's Udin, not Udin. The difference matters, unless you mean to embarrass yourself before truly educated people. The silence that followed was absolute, as if the very air had frozen. Eleanor set down the wine pitcher with deliberate precision and continued. Your Norman French, while passable, carries the accent of someone who learned from books rather than native speakers. Your Latin is technically correct, but stylistically primitive. You speak like a first-year seminary student, not an educated nobleman. And as for your comparison of servants to animals, she switched to fluent Arabic. The Prophet, peace be upon him, said that all humans are equal like the teeth of a comb. Perhaps you should study the wisdom of other cultures before proclaiming your superiority. She continued in Hebrew, quoting from the Talmud about the dignity of labor. Then Mandarin, reciting a poem about the foolishness of pride. Then languages most in the room had never heard. Sanskrit, discussing the illusion of caste, and Old Norse, telling of gods who disguised themselves as beggars to test the hospitality of kings. Lord Marcus's face had transformed from red to purple to a deathly white. "Who are you?" Elena smiled, and it was not a servant's smile. "Someone who knows your secret, my lord. The letter you received 3 weeks ago. The one with the raven seal. The one that speaks of assassination and poison and the fall of kingdoms." The hall erupted. Nobles reached for weapons, guards moved to block exits, and Marcus himself pulled a dagger. But before anyone could act, Lady Katerina stood. "No, Marcus! The game is over!" Her transformation was as complete as Elena's had been. The timid, possibly mad noblewoman vanished, replaced by someone who moved like a trained killer. In one fluid motion she had disarmed 2 guards and stood with their swords crossed at Marcus's throat. "Did you really think the king would let you marry into the Montrose line without investigation, especially after what you did to your first wife?" "That was an accident." "She fell. She was pushed," Elena stated coldly, producing a scroll from her sleeve. "We have signed testimonies from 3 witnesses who were too frightened to speak before. But under royal protection, they've told us everything. The argument, the struggle, the way you threw her from the balcony and then calmly went to dinner while she lay dying in the courtyard below." Marcus's eyes darted between them, calculating. "You think you've won. You know nothing. If you knew the full truth—" He suddenly grabbed a goblet and raised it high. "To revelations!" It was a signal. Throughout the hall, dozens of nobles suddenly stood, throwing off cloaks to reveal armor beneath. Crossbows appeared from under tables. What had been a feast became a battlefield, waiting for the first blow. "You see," Marcus said, his confidence returning, "I knew there would be spies at my engagement. I counted on it. Every assassin, every spy, every agent in this room. I invited you all, because tonight isn't about my marriage. It's about the Great Purge. Tonight, every enemy of the true order dies." But before he could say more, an arrow flew through the window, striking him in the shoulder. Not a fatal wound, but enough to drop him to his knees. The crowd gasped as Master Cromwell entered, leading a contingent of armed soldiers. "I'm afraid Lord Marcus has outlived his usefulness," Cromwell announced, removing his steward's attire to reveal the rich clothing of nobility beneath. "And you, my dear spies, have played your parts perfectly." Elena and Katerina exchanged glances. This wasn't part of any plan they knew. Cromwell continued, his voice carrying the satisfaction of a scheme long in preparation. "Lady Elena of Wessex, yes, I know who you really are. Daughter of the legendary spymaster, trained from birth in the arts of deception. And Lady Katerina, or should I say, Sister Katerina of the Order of Shadows, the Church's most secret and deadly organization." Both women tensed. Their deepest covers hadn't just been blown, they'd been known all along. "You see," Cromwell explained, addressing the frozen hall like a professor lecturing students, "everyone here tonight has been playing a role in my grand performance. Lord Marcus believed he was gathering his enemies to destroy them. You believed you were stopping a murderer from gaining power through marriage. The nobles believed they were attending a simple engagement feast. But in truth, you've all been dancing to my tune." He pulled out a document with an official seal. "Lord Marcus is my half-brother, a fact known to very few. With him disgraced and executed for murder and treason, his lands and titles fall to his nearest legitimate relative, me, the bastard son, recently legitimized by a king who owed me considerable favors. But you needed him publicly exposed," Elena pointed out, her hand moving to where a concealed blade rested. "Precisely. And who better to expose him than the legendary spies of multiple kingdoms? Your testimony will be unimpeachable. The arrow, by the way, is poisoned. Marcus will be dead within the hour, and you'll be blamed for an assassination that went beyond your mandate. After all, you were only supposed to investigate, not execute." Elena laughed, a sound that chilled the room. "Except for one thing, I'm not Elena of Wessex." She pulled off a ring, speaking a word in a language that predated kingdoms. The air around her shimmered like heat waves rising from summer stones. Her appearance transformed. Green eyes became brown, blonde hair darkened to black. Her very bone structure shifted. Where Elena had stood now, stood someone else entirely. Someone whose presence made hardened warriors step back. "My name is Princess Ravenna of the Northern Kingdoms. And you, Cromwell, have just confessed to conspiracy, attempted murder and treason before 500 witnesses, including 3 kings' representatives and a cardinal of the church." Cromwell's smile never wavered. "A magical disguise? Impressive. The Northern Kingdoms were always known for their sorcery before your family's unfortunate fall, but it changes nothing. My men control every exit. The castle is mine." "Your men?" Ravenna gestured gracefully, and one by one, the soldiers Cromwell had brought Ardienski moved their helmets, revealing the faces of the king's guard. "We've been replacing your men for weeks, ever since we intercepted your correspondence with the Eastern Kingdoms about selling military secrets. Did you really think your cipher was unbreakable?" The confidence in Cromwell's face cracked like ice in spring. But before he could respond, another impossibility occurred. Lord Marcus rose from the ground, pulling the arrow from his shoulder. As he did, it became clear the arrow was a stage prop, the blood mere paint. His entire demeanor transformed. The brutish, cruel lord vanished like morning mist, replaced by someone whose intelligence shone from his eyes like cold starlight. "The best way to catch a traitor," he said in a completely different voice, cultured and precise, "is to make them believe they're the smartest person in the room." He reached up and peeled away what was revealed to be an elaborate disguise, a false beard, prosthetics that had broadened his face, even platforms in his boots that had added to his height. The man who stood before them was younger, leaner, and infinitely more dangerous. "Lord Commander Alexander of the King's Intelligence, I've been undercover as Lord Marcus for 3 years, building a reputation for cruelty that would attract every conspirator, rebel, and traitor in 5 kingdoms. And it worked beautifully. But the first wife, the murder," Cromwell stammered. "Lady Margaret, she's quite well, actually." running a safe house for our agents in the Summer Palace. She's particularly gifted at coordinating intelligence networks. Says it's not unlike managing household servants, just with more poison and fewer complaints about the menu." Cromwell laughed, the sound edged with hysteria. "You think you've won? You've all been looking at the ground while the real danger comes from above." He pulled out a vial filled with black liquid that seemed to absorb light. "Do you know what this is? Nightmare's End. The poison that killed the Dragon Kings. One drop in a water supply can kill thousands, and right now, my associates in 12 major cities are poised to pour similar vials into wells and rivers unless I give the signal to stop." "You're bluffing," Alexander stated, though uncertainty flickered in his eyes. "The Order of the Black Sun doesn't bluff," Cromwell declared. "We've been planning this for decades. Tonight was never about Marcus's petty lordship or my inheritance. Tonight was about positioning ourselves to hold the entire realm hostage, submit to our rule, or watch your kingdoms die of thirst and poison." A blade appeared at his throat, held by someone no one had noticed moving. Margot, the cook, stood behind him, but her entire presence had changed. The hefty, flour-dusted cook had vanished, replaced by someone lean and deadly. "Hello, brother," she said in a voice like aged wine laced with hemlock. Cromwell's eyes widened impossibly. "No! You died in the fire. I saw your body." "You saw what I wanted you to see. Lady Blackthorn never truly dies. She just reinvents herself." As she spoke, her appearance shifted, not magically like Ravenna's transformation, but through the removal of padding, wigs, and expertly applied theatrical makeup. The woman revealed was scarred, but beautiful, in the way a blade is beautiful, functional, deadly, perfect in its purpose. 5 years, she continued. I've been in these kitchens. 5 years of listening to every conspiracy, every secret meeting, every whispered plan, including yours. The Order of the Black Sun is real, brother, but I've spent the last month replacing every vial of poison with colored water. Your grand threat is nothing but food coloring and vinegar." "Wait," Princess Ravenna interrupted, her voice shaking with something beyond surprise. "If you're Lady Blackthorn, the Shadow Walker, the ghost of vengeance, then you're the one who sent the original letter, the one with the raven seal." Blackthorn nodded slowly. "I needed all the players on the board. Every spy, every conspirator, every hidden piece, including you, sister." The word hung in the air like a thunderclap. Ravenna staggered as if struck. "That's impossible. My sister died when the Northern Kingdom fell. I saw the burning tower." "You saw a tower burn. You didn't see me die." Blackthorn's voice carried centuries of pain. "I was 14 when the Order orchestrated the coup that destroyed our family. You were only 7, too young to remember that I was away that night, meeting with my tutor. By the time I returned, the palace was in flames, and everyone believed I was dead. It was safer that way. The dead can move in ways the living cannot." "This is all very touching," Alexander interrupted, "but we still have a room full of armed conspirators and a potential catastrophe even if the poison is fake." Blackthorn smiled coldly. "Oh, but they're about to get proof. You see, I didn't just replace the poison. I replaced it with something special, truth-teller's tears. Harmless to drink, but when exposed to air, it creates a very specific reaction in anyone who's taken the Order's initiation draft." She pulled out a crystal that glowed with an eerie light. "This is crystallized sunlight from the Desert of Souls, where the first Dragon Kings made their pact. When its light touches someone who's consumed the Order's initiation poison, a requirement for all members, they'll glow with a green aura that cannot be hidden or disguised." She shattered the crystal against the floor. Light exploded outward, washing over everyone in the hall like a tide of liquid starlight. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, people began to glow with a sickly green luminescence. The bishop who had supported Marcus's mockery, 3 members of the king's own council, a dozen nobles from various houses, guards, servants, even some of the musicians. The infection of the Order ran deeper than anyone had imagined. But the most shocking revelation was Lady Katerina herself, glowing brighter than any of them. "No!" Katerina backed away in horror, staring at her glowing hands. "I'm not one of them. I've been fighting them. You're an unwitting sleeper agent," Blackthorn explained, her voice carrying a hint of sympathy. "The Order takes children, raises them normally, but with subtle conditioning. You genuinely believe you're fighting against them, but when you hear the activation phrase, your true programming takes over." "What phrase?" Katerina asked desperately, tears streaming down her glowing face. Alexander's eyes widened in sudden, terrible understanding. "Don't say it. If she's activated—" "She needs to know the truth," Blackthorn interrupted. "The phrase is, the servant's gambit." The change was instantaneous. Katerina's eyes went blank, and she moved with inhuman speed and precision. In less than a second, she had disarmed 3 guards and seized their weapons, but instead of attacking others, she turned a blade toward her own heart. "No!" Ravenna gestured, and magical force froze Katerina's hand inches from her chest. "There must be another way." "There is," Blackthorn said, pulling out an ancient tome bound in scales that shifted color in the light. "The Order's conditioning can be broken, but it requires a specific sacrifice. The life force of another Order member, freely given, can burn out the poison and the programming, but it must be someone of blood relation." Everyone turned to look at Cromwell, who had gone pale as parchment. "That's impossible," he whispered. "My daughter died in childbirth. The midwife said—" "The midwife lied. She was Order, and they took your daughter as payment for your initiation. They raised her to be a weapon, just as they tried to do with us. But they made one mistake. They let her keep her name. Katerina isn't Lady Katerina of Montrose. She's Katerina Cromwell, your daughter." The hall was silent, except for the sound of Cromwell's ragged breathing. He looked at Katerina, frozen in her attempt at self-destruction, and for the first time really saw her. The shape of her eyes, his eyes, the way she tilted her head when thinking, exactly as his mother had done. "My little cat," he whispered, "I sang you lullabies. I promised to protect you from all the monsters in the world, and then I became one of them." Without hesitation, he took the ancient book from Blackthorn and began reading the ritual. The words were in a language that predated human kingdoms, the tongue of the first magic when the world was young and promises had power. Light began flowing from him to Katerina, not the sickly green of the Order's taint, but pure white light that carried within it something more precious than magic: love, sacrifice, redemption. As the light flowed, Cromwell aged rapidly. Years passed in seconds, his hair whitening, his skin wrinkling, his body weakening. But his voice never wavered as he continued the ritual. The light reached crescendo, and Katerina screamed, not in pain, but in recognition as memories flooded back. True memories, not the Order's fabrications. "Father?" Her voice was that of a child waking from a nightmare. "Father, I remember everything." Cromwell collapsed, his body now that of an ancient man, decades of life given to save his daughter. But around them, chaos erupted. The exposed Order members, realizing their cover was blown, acted in desperate unison. Hidden weapons appeared, poisoned blades flashed in the torchlight, and the feast became a battlefield. But they had made a critical error. Blackthorn hadn't just replaced their poison, she had dosed their wine with something else. "Soldier's Bane," she announced, as Order members began collapsing, their muscles refusing to obey. "Activated by elevated heart rates. The more you fight, the faster you fall." The battle was brief but vicious. Some Order members managed to resist the poison through sheer will or magical protection. The bishop, revealing himself to be more warrior than holy man, fought with devastating skill until Alexander and Ravenna combined their efforts to bring him down. 2 of the king's counselors tried to flee, but were stopped by the very guards they had thought were their allies. In the midst of the chaos, no one noticed a figure in black armor enter through the main doors until he removed his helmet, revealing the last face anyone expected. "Your Majesty!" The cry went up as people recognized King Aldwin himself, though something about him seemed different, older, more worn, as if he carried terrible knowledge. "Enough!" he commanded, and his voice carried such authority that even the fighting stopped. "Lower your weapons, all of you!" Slowly, warily, combatants stepped back. The king walked through the hall, stepping over unconscious order members until he stood at the center of the carnage. "Hello, daughter," he said to Blackthorn. The revelation sent another shockwave through the assembled crowd. Blackthorn, Lady Blackthorn, the ghost of vengeance, was the king's daughter. "Hello, father," she replied, and for the first time her voice carried warmth. "I was wondering when you'd reveal yourself." The king smiled sadly. "The time for secrets is ending. All of them." He turned to address the hall. "The Order of the Black Sun was never what you believed. It was created by my grandfather, not as a tool of oppression, but as a test." "A test?" Alexander asked, still holding his bloodied sword. "Every generation, the realm faces the same danger. Those who would use power to oppress others. The Order was designed to identify these individuals by offering them exactly what they desired: power without accountability, cruelty without consequence. Those who accepted became marked, their very souls tainted in a way that could always be revealed." He gestured to the glowing, paralyzed conspirators. These people chose darkness when offered it freely. They chose to harm others for their own gain. The Order didn't corrupt them, it revealed them. "But the deaths," Ravenna protested. "The coups, the assassinations, all staged. Every victim of the Order lives peacefully in the eastern colonies, their deaths faked to maintain the illusion. Even your parents, Ravenna and Blackthorn, are alive." The sisters staggered in unison. "Our parents, alive? Very much so. They've been helping coordinate these operations from afar, identifying threats to the realm and protecting the innocent. Your deaths were necessary to allow you to move freely, to become the weapons the kingdom needed." Cromwell laughed weakly from where he lay dying. "So I was never truly evil? It was all predetermined?" The king knelt beside him. "No, my friend. Your choices were always your own. You chose to seek redemption. You chose to sacrifice yourself for your daughter. Those choices were real, and they matter more than anything else." As Cromwell drew his last breath, smiling, Katerina began to sing, the same lullaby he had sung to her as a baby. Her voice, clear and beautiful, filled the hall with something that had been absent for too long: hope. But the revelations weren't finished. As the king stood, the crystal fragments on the floor began glowing again. This time the light was different. Golden rather than green. "Impossible," Blackthorn breathed. "That only happens when—" A young servant boy in the corner, who had been watching everything with unusual calm, began glowing with golden light. His appearance shifted, but not through disguise or magic, through the revelation of his true nature. His eyes became reptilian, golden scales appeared along his skin, and when he smiled, his teeth were sharp as daggers. "The Dragon Lords," someone whispered in terror. "But they're extinct." "Not extinct," the boy said, his voice carrying harmonics that resonated in everyone's bones. "Sleeping, waiting, watching." He looked directly at the king. "Your little games of revealing traitors and testing loyalty are amusing, grandfather, but you've forgotten that there are older powers in this world, and older games being played." The king's face went white. "You're lying. My son died. Your son became something more. Dragon blood and human blood mixed create something new, something that can hide even from your tests." The boy's form continued shifting, becoming more draconic with each moment. "For 1,000 years we've been placing our agents, waiting for the right moment. And now, thanks to your elaborate reveal of all the realm's conspirators, we know exactly who can be trusted and who cannot. You've done our work for us." He raised his hand, and symbols throughout the hall, carved into tables, painted on banners, even worked into the very stones, began glowing with dragon fire. "The servant's gambit was never your game, old king. It was ours. And now the true game begins." The hall erupted in golden flame that didn't burn but transformed. Those touched by it screamed as their bodies began changing, revealing that dozens of servants, nobles, and even some of the exposed order members were actually dragon-blooded, their human appearances merely camouflage. "You see," the dragon boy continued, his form now fully revealed as a young dragon in humanoid shape. "Every conspiracy you thought you were controlling, we were controlling. The Order, the rebels, even your own intelligence network, all infiltrated by those with dragon blood. We let you think you were winning because we needed you to gather all the players in one place." Alexander moved to attack, but his sword passed harmlessly through the dragon boy's form. "Phase shifted," the creature laughed. "We exist partially in another realm. Your weapons, your magic, even your precious truth-revealing crystals can't touch us there." "Why?" Ravenna demanded. "What do you want?" "What we've always wanted. What was stolen from us by the first human kings, dominion, but not through conquest, that failed before, this time through revelation. Show humanity that their leaders are all corrupt or compromised, that their systems are all games within games, that nothing they believed was true. Break their faith in everything, and they'll beg for the simplicity of dragon rule." The king drew himself up to his full height. "You're forgetting something, grandson. If you truly are my blood, then you carry within you the same weakness all dragons share." "Oh? And what's that?" "The inability to lie when bound by their true name." The king spoke a word in the dragon tongue, a word that made reality ripple. "I name you Vermithrax the Deceiver, and by that name I bind you to truth." The dragon boy, Vermithrax, screamed as golden chains of light appeared around him, forcing him back into physical reality. "How do you know that name?" "Because your father told me, before his transformation was complete. He knew what you would become, and he gave me the tools to stop you." The king pulled out a blade that hurt to look at, its surface covered in runes that predated human language. "God's bane, the blade that killed the last dragon emperor. Your ancestors' blood still stains its edge." But before he could strike, another transformation occurred. Lady Katerina, who had been cradling her father's body, stood. The grief on her face had been replaced by something else, ancient wisdom that shouldn't exist in such young eyes. "Enough," she said, and her voice carried the authority of ages. "This cycle of deception and revelation has gone on long enough." Everyone turned to stare at her. She was glowing again, but not with green or gold light, with silver radiance that seemed to come from within. "Who are you?" the king demanded. "I am the first servant," she said simply. "The one who has been writing letters with raven seals for 300 years. The one who has been orchestrating these gambits since before your kingdom was founded." She walked to the center of the hall, and as she did, her appearance shifted, not to another disguise, but through ages, child to young woman, to matron to crone, and back again, cycling through lifetimes of faces. Every generation, the same story plays out. The proud are humbled, the humble are elevated. Conspiracies are revealed, truths are shown to be lies and lies shown to be truths, but always the cycle continues, because that's what I designed it to do." "Designed?" Blackthorn asked. "You're saying all of this, the Order, the dragons, every conspiracy, all part of a grand mechanism to test humanity, to force you to confront your nature again and again until you either transcend it or destroy yourselves trying?" The first servant smiled sadly. "I was human once, long ago. I served in a castle not unlike this one. A proud lord mocked me for my ignorance, not knowing I could speak 12 languages and had memorized every book in his library." She looked at Elena Ravenna. "Sound familiar?" "It should. You've been playing my role, as others have before you, as others will after. The servant's gambit isn't a single game. It's an eternal test of whether those with power will abuse it, and whether those without power will seize it when offered." "But why?" Alexander asked. "What's the point of endless cycles of deception?" "Because the alternative is worse. Without these controlled revelations, The corruption would grow unchecked until it destroyed everything. By periodically exposing and purging the worst elements, the realm survives. It's not perfect, but it's better than the alternative. She turned to Vermithrax, still bound by golden chains. Even you, young dragon, are part of the pattern. Your kind returns every few centuries, thinking you're reclaiming what's yours. But you're really just another test. Can humanity unite against an external threat? Can they set aside their differences when faced with extinction? You're lying, Vermithrax snarled. Dragons ruled for millennia before humans. Dragons were created by humans, the first servant interrupted. The first dragon was a human mage who sought power beyond mortality. He got it, but at the cost of his humanity. Every dragon since has been a descendant of that original corruption, humanity's pride given form and wings. The revelation silenced even the dragon. In that silence, the first servant continued walking, touching each person marked by the Order's green glow. As she did, the glow faded, the poison neutralized. "I release you from your bonds," she said to each. "Your choices revealed your nature, but your nature is not fixed. Choose differently and become different." Ikaihi, when she reached Cromwell's body, she knelt and kissed his forehead. "You chose love over power. That choice matters more than all the conspiracies in all the kingdoms." Light flowed from her into him, and impossibly, his chest began to rise and fall again. Not young, still aged by his sacrifice, but alive. "How?" Katerina gasped, embracing her father. "Because sacrifice given freely can be returned threefold. It's the oldest magic, the kind that predates dragons, kingdoms, even humanity itself." The first servant stood and addressed the entire hall. "Tonight's gambit is ended. You've all played your parts beautifully. Some of you thought you were heroes, others villains. Some thought you were revealing truth, others perpetrating deception. But in the end, you all made choices that revealed who you truly are." She looked at each of the major players in turn. "Ravenna, you chose to risk everything to stop what you thought was injustice. Alexander, you chose to live as a monster for years to protect the innocent. Blackthorn, you chose vengeance but tempered it with justice. Cromwell, you chose redemption when you thought yourself damned. Even you, Vermithrax, chose to reveal yourself when you could have remained hidden. These choices matter." "So what happens now?" the king asked. "Do we pretend none of this happened? Go back to our roles?" "No. Now you choose what comes next, knowing what you know. The conspirators have been revealed. Will you execute them or offer redemption? The dragon threat has emerged. Will you fight or negotiate? The truth of the eternal game has been exposed. Will you continue playing or try to break free?" She moved toward the door, her form beginning to fade. "I'll be watching as I always have. And when the time comes for the next gambit, I'll be there. Perhaps as a servant, perhaps as a queen, perhaps as something else entirely. Because the game never truly ends. It just waits for the next move." Before leaving, she turned one last time. "Oh, and Lord Marcus, or rather Alexander, your pronunciation of ancient Greek really is atrocious. You might want to work on that." With that, she vanished, leaving behind only the faint scent of ravens and old parchment. The silence that followed was profound. Hundreds of people, each processing revelations that had shattered their understanding of the world. Finally, it was Margot, or Blackthorn, who spoke. "Well, I still have a feast prepared, and it would be a shame to waste it. Perhaps we could eat while we discuss what in the seven hells we do now?" Nervous laughter rippled through the hall. Slowly, cautiously, people began to sit. Enemies found themselves side by side, conspirators next to those they'd plotted against. The dragon boy, still bound but no longer struggling, was given a seat at the high table. Alexander stood, raising a goblet. "To truth," he said simply. "To choices," Ravenna added, raising her own cup. "To redemption," Cromwell wheezed from where Katerina supported him. "To family," the sisters said in unison. Even Vermithrax raised a goblet with a clawed hand. "To the next game." As they drank, no one noticed the young kitchen boy in the corner, watching with eyes that held depths no child should possess. He smiled and whispered in a language that wouldn't be invented for another 1,000 years. The wheel turns. The game continues. The servant's gambit is eternal. Above, in the tower where she'd watched everything unfold, the real first servant, not Katerina, who had been another player believing herself the orchestrator, smiled. The letter she'd been writing was complete. The pieces have been revealed, the board has been overturned, but already new pieces are moving into position. The proud will fall, the humble will rise, and the servant's gambit will begin again. Trust nothing, question everything, and remember, in this game even the players don't know they're playing. She sealed it with wax, pressing the raven and key deep into the black surface. The letter would find its way to the right hands at the right time. It always did. The feast continued until dawn, when the first rays of sunlight revealed that the castle itself had changed. Symbols that had been carved in stone were gone. Tapestries showed different scenes. Even the architecture seemed subtly different, as if reality itself had been edited. "Did any of it really happen?" someone asked. "Does it matter?" Another replied. "We're here now. We remember. That makes it real enough." As the nobles prepared to depart, each carrying tales that would become legends, Alexander stood with Ravenna and Blackthorn on the battlements, watching the sunrise. "Do you think she was telling the truth?" Ravenna asked. "About it all being an eternal cycle?" "Truth is a luxury we can't afford," Blackthorn replied. "But choices, those we make every day." Alexander nodded. "Then let's choose to be better. Whatever game we're playing, whatever role we've been assigned, we can choose how we play it." Below, in the courtyard, Cromwell sat with his daughter, both of them changed by their ordeal, but alive, together. They didn't speak of grand conspiracies or eternal games. They spoke of small things, favorite foods, childhood memories, hopes for tomorrow. In the end, perhaps those small things mattered more than all the great games combined. The dragon boy, Vermithrax, had been released from his bonds, but chose to remain, curious about these humans who had surprised him. He took human form again, but kept his golden eyes as a reminder of what he was. "Your world is more complex than we thought," he admitted to the king. "Perhaps there's room for negotiation after all." "Perhaps," the king agreed. "But first, breakfast. Even world-changing revelations can't be properly discussed on an empty stomach." As they walked back into the castle, none of them noticed the raven perched on the highest tower, watching with eyes that held intelligence far beyond any bird. It carried no message this time, but its presence was message enough. The game continues. The wheel turns. The servant's gambit is eternal. Behind it, Ironhold Castle stood transformed, no longer a place of cruelty and fear, but something new, not perfect, perhaps never perfect, but trying to be better. And in the kitchen where it all began, a new servant girl arrived, speaking only broken English, counting on her fingers. Margot, still maintaining her role as cook, welcomed her with unusual kindness. "What's your name, child?" "Elena," the girl replied. And for just a moment, her eyes flashed with depths that suggested this Elena, too, knew more than she appeared. In the great hall, now empty of feast and revelry, a single candle burned. Beside it lay a piece of parchment, unsigned and unsealed, with only a few words written in an elegant hand. "The servant girl who stands up to mockery changes the world. The lord who chooses kindness over cruelty changes himself. Both changes matter. Both changes are eternal. Choose wisely. The game is always beginning." No one knew who had written it. Everyone suspected. No one was right. Everyone was correct. And somewhere, in a place that was neither here nor there, neither then nor now, the first servant smiled and began preparing the next letter, the next test, the next opportunity for humanity to rise above itself or fall to its basest nature. In every castle, in every kingdom, in every age, there would always be a proud lord who mocked a servant, never knowing they were setting in motion events that would reveal the truth of every human heart. That power without compassion is weakness, that strength can wear the mask of servitude, and that in the end we are all servants to something greater than ourselves, whether we call it fate, justice, truth, or simply the hope that tomorrow can be better than today. The raven spread its wings and flew toward the rising sun, carrying with it the promise and threat of the next gambit, the next revelation, the next chance for humanity to prove it had learned from its mistakes or doom itself to repeat them forever. The servant's gambit was complete. The servant's gambit continued. The servant's gambit had just begun. The servant's gambit would never end. The wheel turns. The game eternal. The choice, always and forever, remains ours. This the end, or is it?